occasion when he went to dinner with his wife at the building program. And when he was in the restaurant, he noticed a couple that was seated a few tables away. And they were nicely dressed. And in this particular auditorium, there was a salad bar. And one of the waitresses came out carrying one of those replacement to bags of things like dressing. And as she made her way to the salad bar, something caught her foot, and she went headlong, and the mouse landed squarely on this man. And he leaped up and shouted, "My new suit, my new suit! I demand to see the manager." Well, the manager came out and he walked over to the table where the man was just standing there, and he was literally head to toe in the dressing. And upon reaching the table, the manager said, "Is that your problem?" In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is making his way to Jerusalem with his disciples in a crowd. We don't know how many were in this crowd. They're coming. And Jesus has already told the disciples on two different occasions that he is going to go to the cross, and he's going to suffer, and he's going to die, and then be raised. But the disciples Jesus, he considered that James and John would drink of the cup that he would drink, and they would be baptized by the baptism that he gave us. So even though Jesus knew that James and John would scatter to the four corners the way the rest of the disciples would, as they drowned again in the arrest happening at the persecution of Christ that would come. Even though he knew that they would be loved and lose and denied him, he also knew that following his crucifixion and resurrection, that they would walk faithfully as apostles of the risen Lord. He knew that they would, in fact, be true to their Lord. And in Acts 12:2, gives a commentary on how James loses his life. John, when pleaded, his word is similar to what he certainly has many challenges in his life as a disciple. So, even though we might initially look at these two disciples and think how frivolous, how out of touch, how off the mark they were, and in a sense of their, Jesus had a sense of their future faithfulness that was to come. After he hears this request, Jesus takes the time to reform what is that very heart of Christianity and his will to the cross. He says to them, you know that among the Gentiles, they lift up what Lord and Lord others, and they will become tyrants with other people. It's not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be the servant of all. Whoever wishes to be first must be a slave of all. That's a very challenging word for us in our culture today, where we engage in our doing in life, we're into our salary, we're sweating for each other, we're driving around with gadgets we have, we're doing friends we have on Facebook. So it's a challenging teaching for us to think that we are called not to be first, but to be last, not to be served, but to be serving. The prophet Jeremiah lived in turbulent times with the people of Israel. He was warning the people that they needed to repent of the way they were living, or else the Lord would bring judgment upon them. And then that was the understanding when the Babylonians came and devastated Jerusalem and carried many of the people of Israel off to Babylon, including Jeremiah. But as soon as the disaster came, Jeremiah's prophecies of doom began to prophecies of hope. In chapter 31 and 32 of Jeremiah are referred to as the book of comfort. And those 4 verses